It was an instant classic. Spurs Thunder Game 1 Western Conference Finals, double overtime. Let's recap the Spurs' big win. Welcome back to another episode of Spurs in Focus right here on YouTube, iTunes, Pocket Cast, Amazon Podcast, YouTube Music. The list goes on and on. There should be no excuse for you to not subscribe to Spurs in Focus right now. This should be your first spot and only spot for all things San Antonio Spurs. You don't want to go anywhere else. Stay here at Spurs in Focus. Don't forget about the Substack, Spurs in Focus Substack, completely free. Go sign up right now. Click subscribe and you're in. Yeah, they say things aren't free in life. This is. Go subscribe, be part of the crew. My name is Jeff Garcia, a longtime Spurs writer in San Antonio. Glad to have y'all back. What are we talking about today? Obviously, big win, right? Western Conference Finals on the road at OKC, in that gym, that crowd, and your San Antonio Spurs won. Yes, they won in double overtime. Yes, instant NBA classic, go down in history. They win 122 to 115, steal home court advantage, up 1-0 in the West Finals, and Game 2 is looming this Wednesday, but that's for another show. It's about what happened in Game 1. We're going to see some takeaways in a while. We're going to look at the turning point, standout stats, standout players. We're going to get to that shortly. We're going to hear from Mitch Johnson in just a bit. Some observations to kick things off. One, we saw championship mentality, championship poise, championship maturity on that court from your silver and black. The Spurs, they came out quick. They were actually leading in the first period. Your Spurs took control of the game early in the first, opening up the game, taking an early lead on the Thunder. Now, the Thunder did come back after one, tying it up at 27 apiece, but you saw something different. This team, even though people say they don't have experience in the postseason, they sure look like it. They weathered that storm. They weathered multiple OKC Thunder pushes. They weathered multiple times where they lost leads, where the Thunder retook the lead, and they pushed back. This Spurs team was dealing with the physicality from Oklahoma City and passing with flying colors. This Spurs team answered every haymaker that the Thunder threw at them, and they threw haymakers back. You saw that level of maturity on that court come together in a high-stakes game, high-stakes setting, and your Spurs got the best of the Thunder. You got to say this about the Spurs' defense. It was on point throughout the game. Would you be surprised if I told you that the Spurs, made SGA, the reigning, defending NBA MVP, to just 4 points at halftime? You probably thought I would be kidding with you, right? No, they did that. 4 points, 5 assists for SGA. SGA had that line at halftime. That's how dominant the Spurs were defensively. You got to tip your cap to the Spurs defense. Their offense was answering the call. Their defense was even doing a better job of that. At halftime, you had SGA again with just merely 4 points. Chet Holmgren with merely just 5 points. Those are your two big stars right there. Look, when Alex Caruso is leading the Thunder at halftime with 16 points, I think you're doing a pretty good job for the Spurs defensively, reining in the other players, such as Jalen Williams, who was back 12 points at half. You have to look at the Spurs defense, and little things were popping up here and there throughout the game, not just at halftime. The Spurs played better defense. The Spurs were able to cause havoc and create turnovers. The Spurs were able to impose their will when it came to pace and dominating with the guards that they've had. The Spurs were without De'Aaron Fox. You can only imagine what this game would have been like if the Spurs did have Fox. But they had Harper, who started in his first playoff start, obviously, and passed with flying colors. More on him later. You have to look collectively. Victor was Victor. We're going to get to him in later. Victor had a dominant game, but it was just such a team effort by everyone from the overtime period, second overtime period, and for the game. The Spurs had multiple players in double-figure scoring, from Victor with 41, Harper with 24, Devin with 13, Champagnie with 11, and Castle with 17, and Keldon with 13 off the bench. I talked about the defense, right? Carter Bryant, He did a phenomenal job defending SGA, making him work, using that big body of him. Goes back to what I'm saying. This was a team win led by Victor Wembanyama. More on him later again. Everybody who played contributed in a positive way for the Spurs. This Spurs team looks nothing like what we saw in the regular season. They look even better, and that's what's scary, not just for this playoff run, but beyond this season, beyond when the playoffs are over. They look like they are just ready to get title number 6 now. I get it. They still got to get 3 more wins over the Thunder to get to the finals, to get a chance to win the NBA title. But my goodness, I cannot see anything during this game that make me feel like they don't have an answer for OKC. I left the game 1 feeling the Thunder don't have many answers for the Spurs. The Thunder don't have an answer for Wemby. Then again, who does? But Wemby was just a beast. He was Godzilla on the court. That is their huge edge. The Thunder, they have guards, yes. McCain, Williams, SGA, obviously. He did come alive a little bit in the second half, SGA. But this just even down one big triple-headed monster guard with Fox, Harper and Castle, they were just getting what they wanted, especially Harper. Harper, for a rookie in a playoff game, 24 points as mentioned, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. But was even much more key than that was that he had just 1 turnover for the entire game, right? And he added 7 steals. It's a record there, 7 steals. He was plus 14 for the Spurs on the court. Overall, I liked what I saw from this team. Just collectively, they were just humming on both ends of the floor. You got like what you saw in game 1. It did get a little dicey. Again, the second half, the Thunder made another push. They pushed it to overtime, and then they pushed it to a double overtime. But the point is this. Even in that first overtime, where it looked like the Thunder were going to start separating themselves and take the win, the Spurs had an answer. Again, that goes back to what I'm saying. We're seeing this team mature. A younger version of this team, or even younger, I should say, probably doesn't answer the bell. The Thunder, it looked like they were ready to give the Spurs a knockout blow in OT1, but they responded. The Spurs did. Timely threes from Champagny, timely three from Devin Vassell. Wemby making key shots. He made a logo shot. He made a logo shot to put all the pressure on the Thunder in the overtime periods there. I mean, what more can you say? Are there issues that they need to clean up? Sure. Turnovers, we'll get to that in a bit. I think I would say capitalizing or not putting themselves in positions where they could lose the game. They had several moments of that, but they answered it. But that's my point. Every time the Spurs looked like they were going to falter, they corrected themselves, and they looked even better. There's just so much more you could say, and they passed with flying colors. The locker room was cheering, clapping nonstop after the win. It was such a great, great win for San Antonio. And now I really believe that all the pressure moving forward is on OKC. If OKC had won, I said, okay, expected, Spurs, they don't have that playoff pedigree, championship pedigree that the Thunder have. But man, it looked like the Thunder hadn't been there before. It looked like the Spurs had the poise. The Spurs had the focus. The Spurs had the more experience than the Thunder did. It really was a great win. Let's go ahead and hear from Mitch Johnson after the game. Spurs picking up that game 1 win.
It was a competitive game. Felt like both teams just kept doing enough to not be put away and kept doing enough to let the other team know they were trying to pull away. It got to the point probably sometime at the end of that fourth quarter, it just felt like it was a war of wills. And there was a level of mental toughness that was exuded by both teams. And almost sometimes, like in football, they say it's just at some point the time runs out. Felt like everybody kept scoring. But The bench was great for us. We needed every second from everybody that played. And then those 5 guys, I don't know what it is, one of you probably do, but they played maybe the last 15 or so odd game time minutes. And their legs got wobbly, but they composed themselves and finished strong. And that was a heck of a game to be a part of.
There you have it. Mitch Johnson talking post-game. Spurs winning. He said it yourself. You heard what I talked about earlier in the show. The poise, that spirit, that will to win. The Spurs had more of that will to win than the Thunder. Again, you got to tip your cap to the Spurs. Who would have thought that they would be already knocking on the door of an NBA Finals? Just 3 games away from that. Still a long road for the Spurs. Got to get past OKC. We're going to preview game 2 on tomorrow's episode of Spurs in Focus. But my goodness, I mean, they look like they're ready. They are ready to shock the world and be the last team standing. I know I'm getting ahead of myself, right? Got to take care of business. Game 2 is coming up on Wednesday. But again, the War of Wills that you heard from Mitch Johnson, the Spurs won that battle. The bench production. I'm glad he brought that up in their chat right now, everybody. Look at what the Spurs bench did. 13 points by Keldon Johnson. Carter Bryant brought in 3 points, and he had 2 rebounds and 1 assist. He was a plus 10 on the night for the Spurs. Luke Cornett, may not show it, but he played with a lot of toughness in there, playing with physicality, a little too much physicality. Hartenstein had some issues with him with the foul he had, but 3 rebounds, 1 assist. Again, everybody step up. Victor Wembanyama talked about it after the game, saying it was a team effort in the win. So, yeah, kudos. I mean, kudos to the Spurs, 122-115. My goodness. It was – look, I wanted to see how the Spurs were going to respond to OKC runs. As I mentioned earlier, they answered the bell every single time. And I like that from the San Antonio team. From clogging the lanes defensively for the Thunder to not be able to penetrate as easily. Obviously Wemby was working down low, more on him in a bit. They just have no answer for him at all. Chet Holmgren was nearly a non-factor for this team. Okay, sure, he had a block on Wemby to save a potential game winner from him, but nevertheless, he just didn't show up at all for the Thunder there. The Spurs needed cleaned up the turnovers. That's a big issue. The Spurs did escape that issue in the win over the Thunder. For the game, the Spurs had 23 turnovers. That's got to come down. That's really got to come down. The Thunder, capitalized on that with 28 points off those turnovers. It's a big reason why the Thunder were able to stay in it and force a double overtime and nearly win until the Spurs took control in overtime too. So, yeah, there's things to clean up. Overtime, you shouldn't be going there. You take care of business early. 2, watch the turnovers. 3, watch the points off the turnovers for the opposing team. But what more can you say? Those are things that I think are easily corrected moving forward in this series. And by the way, whose bright idea was it to present SGA with the NBA MVP trophy pregame, center court, with the Spurs on the court as well, getting ready for game 1, getting ready for tip-off there. After the game, Wemby did flat out say that, seeing SGA get that trophy motivated him to be the beast mode that he was in game 1. Bad idea, Thunder. Should have never, ever done that at all. All right. I've been talking for a little while. I got to hear from you. What do you think about game 1? Just overall. I'll give you my overall thoughts right now. Let me know on X at Jeff G Spurs Zone right now. Subscribe to Spurs in Focus wherever you get your favorite podcasts, as well as the Substack, which is completely free. Now, when we get back from the break, we're going to look at the turning point, standout stats, standout players, so much more. Coming up next right here on Spurs in Focus.
As the new leader of the Decepticons, I command you to subscribe to Spurs in Focus.
All right, we are back to Spurs in Focus right here on YouTube, iTunes, Pocket Cast, Amazon Podcast, YouTube Music. The list goes on and on. Spurs in Focus, Substack, completely free. Go sign up right now. Hit subscribe and you are in. By the way, in case you're wondering where Rudy Campos is, fortunately, he had some time issues, some scheduling difficulties. He could not make it, but he'll be back later on this week here at Spurs in Focus. All right, it's that time. We're looking at some key areas, and let's start off with, let's get this out of the way because I think this one is pretty obvious. I mean, what can you say? Victor Wembanyama. You got to go with him as the standout player for the game. 41 points, 24 rebounds in game one versus the Thunder. He was on beast mode. He was on God level. He was SS4 God level, if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan like me. He chipped in with 3 assists as well in 48 minutes. He did say he was tired after the game, but he shot 56% from the field. And I liked about that. Most of the damage was done near the paint. That was awesome to see. He goes 12 for 13 from the free throw line. Just missed one free throw. 13 for 23 from the field. 56% shooting from inside the 3 line, mainly at the paint. And just 3 turnovers in those 48 minutes. Had a steal. 9 offensive rebounds. That's great. He was a plus 16 for the Spurs. 1 for 2 from the 3 line. Again, that was that logo 3 he hit. Just a great effort from Victor Wembanyama. What more can you say? Yeah, I can say more about him. How about this? When it came to clutch moments, clutch time, he had 16 clutch points. All right. How about this? When the game was on the line in his double overtime, he led the Spurs with 9 points, 4 rebounds, made all his free throws, 100% shooting in the second overtime there, and no turnovers and a +7 for the game. Without his effort, without this Herculean effort that he did, Spurs probably don't win. 14 points in the first half, 27 points in the second half, 5 points in OT1, 9 points in OT2. He was, Again, I go back to what I said. Should have never, ever presented SGA with that MVP trophy pregame Thunder. That was a bad move. Maybe you do it like the night before, when there's no Spurs in sight. But hey, Victor needed all that motivation. He got a little extra more. So thank you for doing that, Thunder, SGA. We appreciate it. I'm looking at standout stats now, and I'm trying to figure out, I'll give you all 2 right now. And my first standout stat is 14-7. So what is that? That's how much the Spurs dominated the second overtime period. 14-7. In that second overtime period, it was just all San Antonio. Look, the rebounds out-rebounded the Thunder 7-4. More assists than the Thunder 4-2. Had 6 defensive rebounds to the Thunder's 2, and led that overtime period, 3 minutes and 40 seconds of it. While the Thunder did not lead once in the overtime period. So that's my first standout stat there, 14-2, outscoring the Thunder in overtime. My second standout stat is the free throw rate. I think that's key. That's showing a lot of aggressiveness, the will to win, as Mitch Johnson mentioned, and wanting to get to the free throw line, getting that Thunder team in foul trouble, or at least the players picking up silly fouls. So I'm going to go with that. The free throw rate for the game one for the Spurs was 30.2%, while the Thunder were 18.8%. And also bring it up too, because aren't that what the Thunder know from foul baiting, getting the refs to, blow the whistle to every call? No, the Spurs got the calls. The Spurs were the ones that were the aggressors. Stephon Castle doing what he does best, getting to that lane. Victor being a pest, dominant force in the paint. They were fouling him. 30% free throw rate to the Thunder's 18% free throw rate. You got to love it. Yeah, it was the Spurs going to the free throw line, not the Thunder. The turning point for the game for me had to have been the second overtime period. All right, so it was close. The game was still on the line. Now we're in OT period number 2 with about a minute left-ish. The Spurs go on a 7-1 run. That turned it around because at that time, the score was 115-114 Spurs with just a 1-point edge. But in that last minute of overtime period, that's where the Spurs just blew it open, 122-115 to the final score there. And it was all Victor. He had 5 points in that run. He led the way. He was such an intimidating force that you can see it. Any NBA fan could see it. Anytime SGA, Jay Will, Kane, somebody in that Thunder team had a path, looked like a straight shot towards the rim. Yeah, you saw some hesitation there. Even when they did get to the rim and Victor is kind of hovering, making the shots higher, and it just disrupted their shots. He was such a force for the game. And I go back to that. Look, Alex Caruso, he had a great game. He really did. But I would rather have a guy like Alex Caruso try to beat the Spurs than a guy like SGA. So overall, I just think that was a turning point of the game because the game was on the line. But when it came to money time, clutch moments, Game one victory, win or loss, it's still close. It was your Spurs that stepped up to the plate. So, final thoughts about game one here. SGA, yeah, he did have 24 points and the 3 rebounds and 12 assists, double double there. He was a minus 15 though for the Thunder. And you got to also remember this too. Again, they did not have De'Aaron Fox in the lineup. He was out with an injury. He could have been closing this game for the Spurs. He probably, in whether it be the fourth period, first overtime, he probably, if he's on the court there, he probably is the game sealer, the game winner there. He hits it. He takes over. His poise that was not felt on the court, but off the court, on the bench, in street clothes. You can tell he was talking to the guys. So you only can imagine when he does return, possibly in the next game, game two, how much more fits that the Spurs are going to give to the Thunder. Just another weapon they're going to throw at the Thunder. Thunder, they had their shot. They had their shot. At least the Spurs were down their second, big name star there with Fox. They blew it. They had a chance to win it in that first overtime. They looked like they were trying to separate, but they allowed the Spurs to come back. That's why I firmly believe game two, we're already there for the Thunder. It is a must win for the Thunder. They have to win game two. You go back to San Antonio down 0-2, your home court advantage is completely eradicated, and you got to beat the Spurs in their gym, and you got to beat this team 4 out of 5 times after you're down 0-2. Likely not gonna happen, but yeah, what a win. What a win. 122-115 is your final score. Spurs snatch home court advantage away from the mighty Thunder. That scary team. Yeah, they said, yeah, we'll take it. Come try to beat us now that we crushed your soul in game one. We cannot wait for game two. Hopefully that game, this series delivers as long as it takes, because these are two powerhouses. And it was the Spurs that were the better team in game one. Just one game, I get it. But man, you know it, I know it. Thunder got to win game two. If they don't, their season might be will be done sooner than maybe they anticipated. But what do you think about the game one win for your Silver and Black? Let me know on X at Jeff G Spurs Zone. Subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Pocket Cast, Amazon Podcast. The list goes on and on. Spurs in Focus Substack, completely free. I don't charge a dime. Go there right now, hit subscribe. You're part of the crew. You get daily articles, some fun stuff there, from where you can get freebies when Spurs wins if you're living in San Antonio, from free pizza, free meals, free drinks. The list goes on and on. So much more. Game previews, game recaps, all there at Spurs in Focus. And again, we will be back tomorrow to preview game two. We have a special guest lined up, and Rudy will be back. He'll be back. He just got tied up. He tried to make every effort to show up for the show today, but he just couldn't. And I just said, don't worry about it, Rudy. You get the night off. I'll see you down the road. Spurs are up 1-0. Let me know what you think. Again, thank you all for making Spurs in Focus your first and only spot for all things silver and black. This should be your one-stop spot for all things Spurs. Don't go anywhere else. See all those shows on YouTube? Yeah, ignore them. Just come here to Spurs in Focus every single time you want some Spurs knowledge, some Spurs fun, some Spurs talk. You come here to Spurs in Focus. And with that, I am Jeff Garcia, and now you're in focus with Spurs in Focus.